My name is Edgars Alksnis, and let's talk today about records management and how records management plays a role in smart archiving and what actually is smart archiving. So if we talk about records management, so there are two words, records and management. So records, what are records? So basically any shred of information that we have in our company about what we are doing, any document, any email, any note, those are all records that should be kept in a proper way, kept unchanged, and we always need to know where and what kind of records do we have. About the management part, so let's take it into a context, a personal context. So if we talk about management, whatever we are managing, anything, any objects, any documents, anything. So we usually, whenever we acquire something, we make a judgment call. Is it something important for us? Is it something with high value? Is it with less value? So we make this judgment call, how we categorize those objects. And if we start to keep everything, well, keeping everything usually has a bad effect. If we have a lot of things, it takes a lot of time to actually find something. It gets messy. Of course, some of us do this spring cleaning or regular cleaning after some time. So basically, we look at our closet, we see there are a lot of things, and we start this spring cleaning. What's wrong with spring cleaning? Well, the part that do we actually have enough information, or can we make this judgment call that something should be thrown out or destroyed, or maybe it should be recycled in a way, or maybe it will be needed for somebody else in our family or in our business. So it's very important that whenever we start or whenever we acquire something, we already make this judgment call. And we make those categories. We know how we will proceed with it. So just to fight human nature to keep everything, and over time we will have a lot of things, a lot of information, a lot of documents. You all have heard this trend that in past few years information has grown much more than in previous decades. So it's quite important to keep track of all the let's say, manage all our things. So that was a personal context. But if we, so what is records management? Core elements. We get something, we identify what it is, we classify it, we know how we will proceed with it. Then we somehow manage it, this content. We know where to store it, who will be able to access it? Will it be secure enough? Or maybe it should be made publicly available to everybody, so we know how do we manage it. And preserving. We need to keep all the stuff in good shape, unchanged. So if somebody asks us and we need to, let's say, show it as evidence or whatever, use the item in later on in the future, it should be in mint condition. And storing or archiving and dispositioning, of course, those are very important topics because I would say storing is not archiving. So what is archiving? Because in many cases from our customers, we hear that if we store something, a document in a system, it's already archived. Or if we're not using it, we move it to a different folder, then it's archived. I would say archiving is actually two important things. It's preservation, that it's kept unchanged, and we actually move it to a different location, different storage, where it's kept in, I would say, in a vacuum seal and preserved for a long period. So in case of enterprise systems, we don't just move something to a different folder, but we actually move it to different storage, completely different media type, to cheaper storage, to something that can be or can help us preserve content for next generations or next 10 years or next 100 years. So that's the way how I look at archiving. And of course, if we can archive things, it doesn't mean we should keep everything and just archive everything. Disposing is very important part because, as I mentioned previously, if we have a lot of things, it takes a lot of time to find something. And in case of documents in previous past years, usually IT was concerned about large volumes of documents, but then again storage kept getting cheaper, and right now there is a tendency to keep everything. It's all fine until a high employee with high expertise, high value and high costs spends a lot of time to actually find some piece of paper or shred of information that is needed for a project or for a legal case. So that's why disposing of unneeded content is very, very important. So right now, let's talk about actual tools, what can help us how to manage these records. So OpenText Records Management, what it is? It's a set of tools that help us to work or manage information starting from its birth or capturing moment and ending by disposing it. So there are tools to actually classify the content, there are tools to manage it, to get needed approvals or introduce some content to other persons who need to see this content, to ensure that during the project or during other cases, all the employees have access to this information, have fast access to this information. So basically, the information is available at the right time, at the right moment, in the right place. And of course, this retention. We need to retain information for 10 or 20 years. Each type of information has its own life cycle, and we need to know how long and actually with what type of tools we will retain this information in unchanged way. And of course, if some time passes and something sudden happens and there is some legal case or something, we need to intervene and we need to hold these records for a longer time. So we need, again, tools for that. And of course, to archive everything, all the information and dispose. So that's OpenText Records Management. Let's look how it really looks from user's perspective or from practical perspective. So what we want to achieve, we want to have a content management system where any employee with right access can log in and access right information. So in the example on the screen, on the left side, you can see, for example, personal records. Those are HR files, HR cases, which have retentions applied to them. We need to keep them for 7 years. We have this information in the system. We know when we need to dispose of them. We have also some markings so that there's a red hand that we need to apply some holds because maybe there is some legal case. And on the right side of the screen, you see another example with invoices where all the invoices are classified. What type of information it is it important for our organization? What type of security clearance has it? Who has access in the company? Because not all content can be accessed, let's say, by administrators. Administrators maybe have like super permissions, but if this content is considered confidential in our organization, then again, with records management, we mark the content, we say it's confidential, and it should be available only to right persons who have access to confidential content in our company. And of course, we see records management information. What is the status? When the status has changed? When we need to dispose of this information? So that's what we want to achieve from content management side. In your organizations, there are definitely people who are responsible for all those records. And they need insight. They need some tools to be empowered, to be in control of all the content. So there are dashboards for this type of information. We see what kind of content we have in our organization, what kind of content has reached some another life cycle or maturity, and disposition should be changed. Either we need to destroy it, we need to recycle it, we need to move it. So we have a quick glance at all the information that we have in our system. And of course, there are different different things that are needed in the system. So in OpenText, we have these kind of widgets, similarly like you have in your mobile phone. You have widget which allows you to see some kind of information, to perform specific tasks. So again, here also you have combination of widgets, which is called perspective. Whenever you come to your workplace, you log in into your computer, you access your system, or you do it remotely during these COVID times, you have combination of widgets, perspective. It's like your work desk with all information that is needed specifically for you. And of course, different employees have different roles in organization. So these perspectives or combinations of widgets, they are role-based. So whatever, either I am from legal office, either I am records management, either I have different position. I see specific information that is needed for me to make decisions, to access my assignments, to access lists of documents whose dispositions need to be changed. So based on my role, I have a specific perspective. So that part was what we want to achieve. This is in ideal case where we want to be in the future. We have the system set up and we can say, okay, we manage our records, we are in control, we know what's in our company, what's in our systems. But usually the hard part starts when, okay, how do we actually do it? Because whenever a company needs to define their own records management policies, then the real questions start. Okay, how do we do it? It seems very hard. Let's do it later on. Or let's say we just implemented the system. It's completely empty. We don't need any records management policies. Let's do it after 5 or 10 years. But as I mentioned previously, in case with this closet, where we have full closet, and after 5 years we have spring cleaning, we actually can make this judgment call, and can we say that we want to get rid of this information? Also, I have heard, from experience, ideas. Let's just assign to all the content one specific retention term. Let's say, let's keep everything for 5 years and then we will dispose it. Of course, there are some regulations that don't allow it. Some records must be kept for 75 years or even indefinitely. But this approach, when we try to, let's say, similarly treat all the content, then again this problem. After 5 years, who will be the sole responsible person who will say, yes, I will make a judgment call and let's just delete everything that has been kept for 5 years. So cases are different. There may be different type of content, and probably after these 5 years, nobody will make this risky call. So how it works and how we actually set it up, it's easy. There are two main parts. So classifications plus record series identifiers, or we can call them retention schedules. So when we combine them, we actually have records management policy. Let's look at classifications closer. So similarly, whenever you come into the grocery shop or whatever, you look at some aisles in the shop, you see that all products are classified in a way. They are likely products which are similar, and they each have their own classification assigned. Similarly, in your company, business persons will work with records management, and they will work on this classification file plan to actually identify what kind of information, what kind of object types you have in your systems, what kind of information you have in your organization, what kind of information has been relayed to you from your customers, and how should you treat it. So you make up these classifications. Again, similar example like with the shop, but probably you want to, let's say, assign same classification to something that is kind of similar. For example, if we talk about HR, all HR documents, let's say, should be treated equally. But there is definitely a point to go deeper. and make those classification trees a little bit more specific, because not all HR documents are or should be treated equally. So those classification trees should be based on, let's say, or differences of each of those information types. How long should we keep them? How important they are to us? Either it's an HR, just an email or note to somebody, or it's a contract, or it's a benefit on compensation documentation. So classifications trees should be more specific. When we have worked on this file plan, we have made classifications. So this is something that should be done on the paper outside of the system. Of course, in the system, we have specific tools that help us to fix this result that we have achieved outside of the system. So in OpenText Content Server, we have classifications section where we can create with few clicks records management classification. It's not something that should be done by administrator. It can be done by any user with specific rights in the system, and of course knowledge. So for example, that could be records manager, which just logs into the system, goes to records management classifications, and with few clicks he creates this classification tree. Each classification is an object with data. It has status, it has file number, like an index for this classification. It has starting date, probably end date, and other metadata. For example, how important for our company are objects or documents which are classified with this classification. So if we go further, so we talked about classifications. Next, those are record series identifiers. So we need to define how we treat objects which are classified with this specific classification. Again, if we talk in analogies or create some parallels, we can look at shops. In shops, we have like many products, and even if they are classified, they are differently classified, and they should be treated in different ways. So, for example, some products can be kept only 3 or 5 days, and then we need to dispose of them. Some of the products should be kept in a freezer, or maybe we can keep them on the shelf while they are not open. After we have opened, we need to keep them in again in our fridge or something like that. That's actually how we make up the life cycle. Life cycles consist of multiple steps, and similarly as with other products, we have step 1. For example, we can keep it in our storages or warehouses for a month. Then we can keep it still in the shop's local warehouse for a few other weeks, and when we get it to the shelf, maybe we can keep there for, I don't know, 5 days more, and then it should be disposed. So that's how our life cycle for information actually is built. We need to look at it in those stages, and how and for how long time we can keep this information or this product. So, as I mentioned, a lot of things should be done outside of the system. Usually, when customers say, "Okay, this is an IT project," we say, "Actually, it's not an IT project. It's more like a change management project, or something that should be initially done outside of the system. Maybe some paradigms should be changed. How you treat information." So let's look at a short example. So if, for example, we have this retention or RSI object which defines lifecycle for a piece of information that should be kept for 7 years. The first stage could be we work with this content. Initially, it's created. Let's say 10 persons work on one specific document, multiple versions are created, and it's the document is already kind of in our system, but there is this active phase where we just work on it. And when we finally mark it official, we say it's done, we have finished working on this document, then it can go to the second stage. So during this first stage, we purge all the versions. We say, okay, we had some 100 versions, we kept them, because at some point maybe we need to roll back some version, or we need to look up some changes that were made to the document. But when we have finished working on this document, we don't need to keep 100 versions. It takes up space, it takes up time to actually validate, are we working with the latest version. So what we can do, we purge versions, we do it automatically. And let's say at this point, maybe we have, since we have done this initial work on the document, we can use archive, OpenText archive feature that based on content's status, we can actually invoke archiving move job to move content to completely different storage. It will still be accessible in the system. It will just be moved to different storage, this finalized version, because maybe the storage is slower, cheaper, or it's better equipped with more backups or whatever. So we can keep that document and change there safely for 7 years. So before that, we could keep it somewhere on the server, work on it, but later on we move to secure, safe place for long-term storage. And after first stage, when the 7 years are reached, then we make decision to actually dispose of this object, and it should be destroyed. And this initial work should be done, as I mentioned, outside of the system. Usually it's either Excel file or whatever file plan tool is used, and we just set up how all those stages should happen. So for example, first stage, we purge versions, we leave comment what should happen, why should happen, what date should we use, and does it happen automatically? Because, for example, if version should be purged, I don't want to bother any records manager or records officer by approving that some document versions can be purged. I can just say, okay, it should happen automatically whenever this lifecycle comes to, or time has passed, or in this case, event conditions are, it's marked official, then we purge versions automatically. And later on, if 7 years have passed, then we need to get some approvals. So actually this actioning is manual, and somebody need to say, okay, I have looked at this content and I make decision based on records management policy. So, when we have done this work outside of the system, we have prepared steps, lifecycle, all the conditions. We just relay this information to records manager or some power user, and he just creates with few clicks this RSI in the system. So in this case, those are few clicks. We have a screenshot of this RSI object where we specify same information, what should happen automatically, when it should happen, for how many years should we keep information, and we have with few clicks created this RSI object. And then, of course, we need to connect it somehow together. So initially, we had on the left side, we have records management classification. So, for example, all personal records will be classified with this personal record classification. And in personal records classification metadata, we specify which potential schedule should be used for this classification. So whenever we have a new object in the system, we want to classify it and assign this schedule, so the system will keep track when it should be disposed. So how do we apply these around policies, records management policies? There are actually multiple ways. It's not like every piece of information that is entered into the system needs to be specifically said, okay, this is HR document or this is some contract. In the system, we use those classifications to actually configure like defaults or automatic classifications. We say that if content is added in the module contracts, it should definitely be already automatically classified as contract. If we add something into the HR case file, then again, probably there is already a folder structure with employee, let's say, certificates, some education documents, contracts, and stuff like that. So each of these folders must be configured with like default classification, and then users have hassle-free time just to adding content, and whenever new content is added, it's automatically classified. Next thing, of course, there in the system, there are tools, again, intelligent classification, so we can actually specify or teach the system. So if a document has such type, such metadata, such information, it probably is contract. So the system will look for those clues and automatically apply those intelligent classifications using our provided information, even semantics. So it's not something that should be done manually. Of course, there's always some parts of the system where we allow users to create a lot of different type of contents, and then users can actually choose how they want to classify. Also, these classifications, they are not just about retention periods or life cycles. We can create multiple records management classification trees and use them for different purposes. So, for example, we can say a document is contract that should be kept for, let's say, 7 years. And also we are assigning a second classification because, for example, we are working with large projects in our organization, and projects are very important for us. So we have different classification tree designated what kind of project it is, or even the completely specific project. So all the information that comes into our system, we can say to which project it relates. We don't need to go to specific project area and add documents there. We can add contracts within contracts module. We can add invoices within invoice module. But whenever we classify that it's related to specific project, later on, we have access to all this information in different, let's say, slices or in different virtual views. We can look at, we can ask a system, show me everything that's classified with this specific classification. So that's how we apply classifications. Later on, so we have classified all this content, and classifications have this RSI, so the system knows what kind of life cycle there should be. Time has passed, and in system we have these disposition objects which are automatically looking for content whose disposition should be changed. So again, it's not something that should be done manually. The system automatically creates this disposition dashboard and presents it to administrator or records manager or some business responsible person who sees all the records which have matured to a certain degree. And let's say if all documents were 5 years or 7 years have passed, they have reached some point in their life cycle that their disposition should be changed. Dispositions can be completely different. Either we need to destroy object, or we need to actually move it to different location, or we need to act on it in a different way. So multiple types of dispositions. So this is how disposition dashboard looks, where we can make decisions. Of course, if we talk about dispositioning, some things should happen automatically. We don't want, again, to involve multiple persons to apply that we can destroy in a project some memo that should be kept for 1 year. Probably a project has ended, so event has happened, system automatically sets 1 year we keep this memo, and after 1 year we automatically throw it away. Of course, not all things can happen automatically, because then you can lose control over some more important more important content. So in system we can specify how dispositioning is happening for specific disposition search object. Either it's standard review, for example, first level of reviewers look at the content and say, okay, we approve, this should be destroyed or moved to next phase, and then second reviewers review it. Or again, for each specific classification, each specific disposition, you can have completely customized workflow or process, what should happen in your company. And again, it's not something that's very complicated. Inside the system, you have simple drag and point and click, like a tool to create workflow, where it starts, what kind of person should be involved, if somebody rejects, what happens, and where in this process records management disposition review step should be. So we gather some initial approvals, for example, and then we send records management disposition review final step to records manager who makes decision that, okay, all this content should be actually disposed. And of course, to actually be able to make this judgment call and be sure that in the future we have defend this position why we made this judgment call, system creates dispositioning log file, which we can later on show to any internal or external auditor and prove, okay, this is the content that we destroyed based on such records management policy, what kind of retention terms were there, what was the legal reason why we kept this content so long, and why we have disposed of it. So example, in GDPR context, right now, we should keep only information regarding some person as long as we need it. So whenever a specific event is triggered, we have finished our business, we keep some retention period, and later on we dispose of it. And if some external auditor asks us, or data inspection, how we disposed of all the information, we can show them these disposition logs or automatically generated audit reports, which can be stored separately or even signed, which serve as a proof later on how we are managing our content. So I hope I made it a little bit more clear how you actually in practice work with classifications and how you work with RSIs. I hope you have asked me some questions. I will quickly check.
Yeah, we have some questions, but you check. You can check.
Okay.
You can check, and while you're checking, I will ask the questions I got from the audience too. So, in every company, there's many types of information and data and so on. Each should be stored different period, like 2 years, 5 or 75 even, yeah. So how the Smart Archive can help with that?
Okay, very good question. If we talk about OpenText records management, one huge part of the solution is actual archive. So archiving component, whenever we classify our content in the system, later on what Smart Archiving does, based on those classifications, we can create different virtual archives for, let's say, keeping one cheaper archive documents that should be kept for 75 years. In different virtual archive, we can keep documents which should be kept for 5 years, and they should be accessed faster, so using different hardware. And also Smart Archiving, what it also does, if we ask to the archive some content that's kept on slow, cheap media for 75 years, and we asked it once, archive already presumes that in near future somebody could ask for it again. So what we do, or what archive does, it temporarily stores it on faster media in case somebody else next day asks for the same content. And also, since 75 years, for example, is very long time, as you know, the world is very fast, and in previous times there were hard drives, Udo disks, or optical media.
Maybe it will be liquid drives.
Exactly, and archive already presumes that all the hardware will change after time, and it already has built-in tools that you just say, okay, from this old archive, I want to get all information that is still relevant, that should be still kept, and I want to migrate it automatically to my liquid storage or whatever. And the system will always ask archive if I need this document, and archive will always know where it's stored, either it's liquid storage or something else.
Okay. The next question is, from your experience, in what areas of records management average company lacking? What you work with the hundreds of companies, so it's a main problem.
To be honest, I would say, okay, I don't want to say that they are lacking in all categories, because the problem is actually disposing of content. The source of this problem is this initial classification, because if you have content which is not classified, after 10 years you have full system, slow system, search is slow, users are complaining that there are thousands of contracts, I cannot find whatever I need. And the problem is nobody can step up and say, okay, this is the content that we can actually dispose and make system faster, cleaner, because if you haven't done this homework initially and classified it, it's a tough judgment call. I would struggle with it, because how I can say actually that you can delete half of the system, and if somebody on the next day asks me,
where's the data?
Where's the data and why you did it?
Correct.
So that's why records management needs to be implemented already from beginning.
Okay, and how can with these what you mentioned, systems and solutions, okay, the first steps the companies should do, okay, like not just make new or buy new software. This is not the case.
No, as I mentioned, it's a change process. You need to change your paradigms, how you look at the content. So initially, you don't think about the systems. Of course, IT tools are needed to actually implement it and automate it. But initially, you just sit with your business persons and you ask them what kind of content you have, what kind of documents you have, what are regulations, how long should we keep them, where do you use this information on a daily basis, how would you like to access it, who can access it. So those are
analysis and then audits and so on.
Exactly.
The first speaker mentioned, yes, this we need to start with that. Yes. Okay, Edgars, thank you very much, and I think it was really valuable for you too. And now we are in the final notes. Thank you.
Okay.